Jon Jones, the man many call the greatest fighter of all time, has officially asked to leave the UFC. But this wasn't some snap decision. It was the explosive end to months of simmering tension, broken promises, and a final bitter dispute with Dana White that could change the face of MMA forever. This isn't just about one fighter. It's a story about power, money, and respect. It pulls back the curtain on the brutal reality of the fight business, where even a legend can be made to feel worthless. To understand how we got here, how the UFC's reigning heavyweight champ and the face of the company ended up on a collision course, we have to go back to an announcement that should have been a triumph for the sport. It was a spectacle years in the making, designed to be the UFC's crowning achievement. On June 14, 2026, the UFC would stage Freedom 250, a historic event on the South Lawn of the White House. The date was symbolic, Flag Day falling within the 250th anniversary year of the United States. This was more than a fight night, it was a statement. An octagon at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, broadcast to the world, was the UFC's "We've finally made it" moment. When the fight card was announced during the UFC 326 broadcast, it was, as expected, stacked. A lightweight title unification bout between the ferocious Ilia Topuria and beloved interim champ Justin Gaethje was the headliner. For the co-main, the electrifying Alex Pereira was set to move up and challenge Cyril Gane for an interim heavyweight title. Big names like Sean O'Malley, Michael Chandler, and Bo Nickel rounded out the lineup. It was a card built for maximum impact. But as the names were read out, one glaring omission hung in the air, a question every fan was asking. Where is Jon Jones? For months, Jones had made it clear he wanted on this card. He'd even come out of a brief retirement, announced in June 2025, specifically for this shot, re-entering the drug testing pool to make it happen. As the reigning undisputed heavyweight champion and arguably the biggest star in the sport, his inclusion felt like a no-brainer. A fighter with a 28-1-1 record on a card this huge seemed like a marketing slam dunk. His only loss was a controversial DQ over a decade ago, and he holds the record for the longest title-winning streak in UFC history. By any measure, he was the king. So when the greatest card in history was announced without the greatest fighter of all time, the MMA world was floored. The co-main event featured an interim heavyweight title, a belt that only exists because the real champion is on the sidelines. Why would the UFC feature a placeholder title on its most historic card when the champ was healthy and ready to go? The answer, as it turned out, was way more complicated and messy than anyone imagined. It was the first public shot in a war that had been brewing behind the scenes. The fallout was immediate. At the post-UFC 326 press conference, the questions came thick and fast. Why wasn't Jon Jones, the heavyweight champ who last knocked out Stipe Miocic in November 2024, on the White House card? Dana White, in his typical blunt style, didn't just answer. He tried to blow up the whole question.
There is speculation, of course, that it's Jon Jones.
No, it's not.
Was Jon
Never, ever, ever, which I told you guys 100,000 times, was Jon Jones even remotely in my mind to fight at the White House. I wouldn't. First of all, I've told you why I wouldn't do it. And number two, some guy with meta glasses on filmed him talking about his hips, that his hips are so bad. And I don't know if you guys saw that flag football game where he can barely run. Jon Jones he retired because of his hips. He's got arthritis in his hips. Apparently he's been, doctors say he should have hip replacement. So add that on top of all the other reasons that I wouldn't. The Jon Jones thing is bullshit. I'm not saying they weren't talking to Jon Jones and that Jon Jones wasn't interested in the fight. And what was even crazier is Jon Jones came out and was like, I'm in negotiations right now for the White House fight, after I had already sent a text to his lawyer saying, never going to happen ever.
Is it fair to say then Jon Jones is retired and this is the end of his time?
Yes.
Okay.
Very fair.
According to White, the idea of Jones fighting was a total fantasy. He even claimed that an hour before Jones publicly said he was in negotiations, he had already texted Jones's lawyer to say it was never gonna happen ever. White's story was simple. There were no talks because the door was never open. But that wasn't the story Jon Jones was telling. In a series of now-deleted posts, he aired his confusion and frustration. Make this make sense. So all of this negotiating was complete bullshit. Is that what you want me to agree to publicly? The posts were raw and hinted at a deep sense of betrayal. After taking a day, Jones released a formal statement on X that blew up every part of Dana White's story. Dana, you were heated about why I'm not on the White House card, but let's clear something up, Jones began. My team and I were actually negotiating with the UFC for that fight. Real negotiations. This wasn't some casual text. According to Jones, these were serious business talks. He even said he had come down from my original number, a clear sign he was trying to make a deal. Then he dropped the bombshell that contradicted White's whole narrative. Jones revealed that far from being never in my mind, the UFC had been chasing him just days before. As recently as Friday, Jones wrote, UFC was calling me trying to get me on that White House card for a much lower number. Suddenly, there were two stories that just couldn't both be true. In Dana's version, Jones was a non-starter. In Jon's version, he was not only in the running, but was being actively pursued with a lowball offer. One of them wasn't telling the truth, and this public he said was only the beginning. To back up his claim that Jones was never in the picture, Dana White played a new card. He went public with the champion's health problems. He brought up a viral video filmed by a fan with Meta glasses, where Jones, not knowing he was being recorded, talked openly about his hip issues. He's got arthritis in his hips, White told the press. Apparently, doctors say he should have a hip replacement. He used this as proof that Jones was physically unfit to fight, basically trying to retire the champ on the spot. This was a calculated move. By painting Jones as a broken-down fighter, White could justify leaving him off the card and frame it as concern for his well-being. He was the responsible boss, protecting a legend from himself. The message was clear. Jon Jones can't fight, so of course he wasn't on the card. Jones's response was swift and sharp, and it cut right through the fake concern with cold logic. Yes, I have arthritis in my hip and it's painful, but that doesn't mean I can't fight, Jones stated. He then exposed the massive hole in Dana's argument with one devastating question. So, let me get this straight. If I had accepted the lowball offer, suddenly my hip would be fine and I'd be on the White House card? That doesn't make sense. With that one sentence, Jones dismantled White's entire premise. The hip was either a career-ending problem or a convenient excuse. It couldn't be both. If the UFC was making him offers, as he claimed, they obviously thought he was fit to compete. The only thing that changed was the money. It looked like the injury wasn't a medical concern. It was a negotiation tactic being used as a weapon. To add insult to injury, Jones revealed just how seriously he was taking the potential fight. He said he had received stem cell treatment last week to get ready for the White House card, and training camp was scheduled to start today. That's not what a man who is physically done does. That's what a professional athlete does when he's getting ready for a championship fight, spending his own money to be at his best. The fight was no longer just about who said what. It was a public power struggle over Jon Jones's body and his career. It's clear this situation is incredibly messy, with huge consequences for all of MMA. If you're getting value out of this breakdown and want to stay on top of the biggest stories in the sport, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. At the heart of all this, as always, is money. While we don't know the exact figures, Jones's own words tell the story. The phrase, "I was lowballed," shows up again and again in his statements. This feeling of being undervalued by the promotion he helped build isn't new. It's a bad echo of a similar fight in June 2025, when talks for a bout against Tom Aspinall fell apart and Jones briefly announced his retirement. This wasn't a one-off argument, it was a pattern of the UFC and its biggest star being miles apart on his value. The timeline Jones laid out makes the UFC look particularly bad. He says real negotiations were happening, and that he even lowered his asking price to get a deal done. In return, only a lowball offer. Then, after those talks apparently died, he claims the UFC came back to him on Friday, March 7th, just one day before the card was officially announced, with an even lower offer. This sounds like a high-stakes game of chicken. It seems the UFC may have tried to pressure Jones into taking a cheap deal at the last minute, using his desire to be on the historic card against him. When he didn't cave, they moved on, announcing the interim title fight instead. Dana White even admitted the main event was a last-minute addition. It all points to a frantic negotiation that completely blew up. For Jones, this was the ultimate insult. After a legendary career, youngest champ in UFC history, record-breaking title defenses, moving up to capture a second belt, to be told he was done and lowballed at the same time was too much. His final statement wasn't a negotiation, it was an ultimatum. I understand business deals fall through sometimes, but going out publicly and saying things that aren't true isn't right. After everything I've given to the UFC, hearing that I'm done is disappointing. And then came the words that sent a shockwave through the MMA world. If the UFC truly feels like I'm done, then I respectfully ask to be released from my contract today. No more spins, no more games. This was no longer a dispute. It was a request for a divorce. Jon Jones's public plea for freedom doesn't come out of nowhere. It's happening in the shadow of another heavyweight champ who walked the exact same path, Francis Ngannou. In 2023, Ngannou, then the undisputed king of the division, vacated his title and left the UFC after a long public contract battle. He wasn't just after more money, he wanted freedom. The freedom to box, the freedom to get his own sponsors, the freedom to be a true, independent contractor. Many thought he was making a huge mistake, but Ngannou bet on himself and won, scoring massive paydays in boxing and a better MMA deal elsewhere. His journey created a blueprint. It proved there is a rich life after the UFC, even for a champ at the top of his game. When Jones asked for his release, Ngannou was one of the first to chime in, and his message was crystal clear. Johnny boy, if you manage to get your freedom, then let me know. You deserve that 30-man pluses after everything you've done for the sport, and they should be rolling out the red carpet for you. This wasn't just a nice message. It was validation from the one person who gets it. Ngannou later said at a press conference, "We are not employees, we are independent contractors, and then we should be able to get what we deserve. And if we don't, we will have a right to walk away and go look at other options." He framed Jones's fight as part of a bigger struggle for all fighters. The thought of a free Jon Jones meeting a free Francis Ngannou, the mega fight the UFC could never make, is the promotion's ultimate nightmare. Ngannou's success has completely changed the power dynamic. It has shown other stars, especially someone of Jones's status, that they have real leverage. The UFC's iron grip isn't so absolute anymore. Jones isn't just fighting for a bigger paycheck, he's fighting for the same freedom Ngannou already won. So what happens now? Contractually, the UFC holds all the cards. They have no legal obligation to release Jon Jones. They could just freeze his contract, forcing him to either fight for them on their terms or not fight at all. But the PR damage might already be done. Their attempt to control the story has blown up in their faces, making them look petty and disrespectful to one of their greatest athletes. If they let him go, they risk Jones walking straight into a blockbuster fight with Francis Ngannou, a fight that would be a giant advertisement for a rival promoter and a constant reminder of the legends the UFC let get away. If they hold him hostage, they're looking at a long, ugly public fight with a beloved champion who has tons of support. The heavyweight division is now in total chaos, with an unhappy champion, an interim champ, and a former champ all fighting for legitimacy. The real reason Jon Jones wants to leave the UFC goes way beyond the White House card. It's the result of years of feeling disrespected and undervalued by a system that puts the promotion's power above a fighter's independence. It's about a champion who, after conquering the sport, realized that the belt doesn't automatically come with respect or freedom. This has become a fight for his legacy, not just in the cage, but as an athlete who decided to stand up to the machine. What do you think the UFC should do? Let Jones go or force him to honor the contract? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.